Hello, I'm Dr. K. Renee, and I am the author of the children's book, Different Us. Different Us is about a struggle for 4 close friends to make it through 5th grade without being the main focus of teasing and bullying. Would you like to hear more about that? Of course you would. Let's read. Summer had ended, and it was time to head back to school for the fall. Here we all were together again, the 4 of us, me, Jacob, Sarah, and Sammy. We were better known to the cool kids at school as the Odd Squad. I really didn't like the name, but I guess it could have been worse. It was our final year at St. Mary's Primary School, and we had made it to 5th grade. I couldn't believe it. I thought this year would never come. Who am I? I'm Maliyah, and I'm 10 years old. And I guess I'd say that I'm a little bit different than the others. The meanest kids at school refer to me as the mixed chick. I didn't plan it this way, but my mom and dad had other plans. My mom is German, but here in the US, that makes her white. And my dad, he's African American. Some call him black. But whether black or African American, it never seemed to bother my dad either way. He had always been a very proud and confident man. Perhaps the military made him that way. But anyway, that's what made me the mixed chick. I'm that girl who gets teased because of my hair and because I look different from my parents, especially when it comes to my hair situation. I can't help it though. My tightly coiled hair has a personality of its own, and it seems to always be confused. To be totally honest, I have absolutely no idea what to do with my hair, and bless my mom's heart, she definitely doesn't know. The only hair she seemed to have control over was hers. She had beautiful, long, straight hair. In all reality, I'd feel a lot better if people simply saw me for who I was. I was just Maliyah. Maliyah Rain Withers. That's who I am. Sometimes I had to get bold enough to tell people, I am not my hair. To my 3 best friends though, my hair never really seemed to matter. It was everybody else that it seemed to trouble. Through it all, I always tried to keep in mind what my dad says. Maliyah, those that mind don't matter, and those that matter don't mind. Anyway, enough about me. I must introduce you to the rest of the crew. I'll start with Jacob. Since kindergarten at St. Mary's, Jacob had always been the first kid to be called on the attendance roster each morning. Our teacher, Miss Bottoms, would call his full name aloud, Jacob K. Adams, as if she was really excited to start each and every day. Jacob was a shy and quiet boy. He'd softly mumble under his breath, present. Jacob was a Caucasian boy with really pale white skin. He was the most quiet person in our squad, not to mention being the quietest in the entire class. I saw positive things in Jacob. Behind those thick glasses of his, he had the most beautiful hazel eyes. They always seemed to match his school uniform perfectly. His eyes had the perfect combination of green, gold, and brown. Musically, the boy was a genius. He played clarinet in the band at school, and he was a classically trained violinist. He had even taught himself how to play guitar. While it seemed that not a day passed at school that kids would tease and make fun of the squad, I think Jacob just might have caught the worst of things. Jacob's legs were very long and thin. For whatever reason, he wore his belt really high around his waist, and that perhaps didn't help things. He wore thick glasses and had worn braces on his teeth since 3rd grade. To top things off, he was always the only boy in band class that played clarinet. Now allow me to tell you about our dear friend Sarah Kennedy. She was the tallest girl in our 5th grade class. She was taller than all the other girls and boys at school. She was a hoot, and we loved her. Sarah, however, was a talker. I mean, the girl talked all of the time. There wasn't a day that Miss Bottoms didn't have to tell her to hush or quiet down. Sarah was redheaded and rather tall for a 5th grader. She had a head full of really big, thick, and curly hair. She had more freckles than any one person could count. Although Sarah's big red hair would stand out in a classroom of 20 students, it could never compete with her big personality. While the class enjoyed the sense of humor that Sarah brought to the classroom, they would still often whisper and call her names like Ginger the Giant. From time to time, she would hear them make fun of her, but seemed to always remain fearless and positive. The 4th member of our squad was Samson Daly. We like to call him Sammy. Sammy was a big, tall, and wide boy. Like my dad, Sammy was black. He and his family were from the island of Trinidad. Sammy wore long dreadlocks. If you don't know what those are, they are locks of hair that are formed from braids, twists, or matted hair. I often thought of Sammy as a gentle giant. He was kind and had a big heart. Sammy was the smartest boy in class, and you could always count on him to be on the A honor roll. Most of us wish that we could have been half as smart as Sammy was. He often said that when he grew up, that he was going to be a lawyer so that he could fight to protect innocent people. But even with all his good qualities, students still couldn't resist the temptation to say negative things about him. They teased him because of his weight and because he had very dark skin. They ridiculed his long, natural locks of hair. But interestingly enough, no one except for those in the squad ever bothered to ask Sammy about his unique hairstyle and why it seemed so important to him. Sammy once explained that for him and his family, their dreadlocks held spiritual significance to them, and that his hair was a symbol of power and strength. I thought that was quite awesome. If you haven't figured it out already, St. Mary's is a Catholic school. Here at my school, we go to Mass once every day. Mass is kind of like going to church. During Mass, we are taught about God, the history of the Catholic Church, and we learn to pray. You would think that most of the kids would be focused on good things while in Mass, but not so. Some of them use the time to hide behind the pews that we sit on and pick on others while calling them really rude names. And yes, the odd squad got their fair share. It is here during our time at Mass where the rude and mean kids reminded me most of my tightly coiled and difficult to style hair that they like to call nappy. It's here where Jacob is reminded that he's the girly, skinny clarinet playing brace face. And yes, it's here where Sarah is made fun of because she's the tallest person in 5th grade class and has fiery big red hair and freckles. And Sammy, it's here during Mass of all places where Sammy gets teased about his weight and his hair being in dreadlocks. A few weeks after school started, we all planned to meet at Sammy's house. We loved to meet there because Sammy's mom was the best cook. She made the best homemade mac and cheese bombs ever. They were always served hot and cheesy, fresh out of the oven. It's a tradition that the 4 of us have had since 2nd grade. But this year, something different, maybe even strange, happened at Sammy's house. We actually talked. I mean, we really talked. We shared our experiences at St. Mary's in a way that we hadn't before. Jacob really opened up for the first time and talked about how it really bothers him to be teased about being skinnier than any of our other classmates. He talked about how much it hurts for him to be thought of as a girl just because he had a passion for music and chose to play the clarinet at school. But it was Sarah's story that really touched and surprised me most. Never before had she shared with us what it was like to be the tallest kid at our school, or to be the only redhead with the biggest hair and freckles. I never knew that she felt that her freckles kept others from seeing her for who she was. She said that all the teasing made her feel that God had somehow made a mistake in creating her the way that He did. This was shocking to me, because I always saw Sarah as being the most courageous and outgoing person in the bunch. As far as Sammy, he just kind of remained quiet. Over the years, he'd shared with us many times about his frustration with other people's ignorance over the struggles that he's always had with his weight, and about his choice to wear dreadlocks. After exchanging our stories for the very first time, we became okay with the fact that being different isn't a bad thing. Sammy said, "Think about it, guys. If everyone looked and acted the very same way, this would be a very boring world to live in." That's something I personally agreed with. It is because of this that I came to terms that day that even my mixed heritage, which resulted in me having tightly coiled hair, was made the way it was for a purpose, and that it didn't have to look like my mom's hair or anybody else's to be beautiful. Because beauty is something that has to start from within. From that day forward, we made a choice to see our individual struggles in a different way. We made a pact that no matter how other kids treated us, we would always remain bigger people. We decided that we could be bigger people because the God that took time to uniquely create us was a big and awesome God. We agreed that God was bigger than us, bigger than our hurt feelings, and even much bigger than the kids who had no better sits than to pick on and make fun of us. We realized that day, no matter how different we were from one another, God doesn't make any mistake in His creations. It was then and there that the way I began to think about myself changed. I became a different me. And that day, as we leaned on one another and took the time to better understand one another's struggle, together we became a different us. The end.